Hello, I am Madeline Te Whiu. I am the author of the Soul Thief trilogy, with the third and final part of the series coming out in October.
I'm actually quite excited for the Clone coming up. I've been starting to reread the series as well in preparation.
Yeah, the third one's a bit of a chunky book. Uh,
It's always how it is for the last the
it,
last of the trilogy.
it wasn't intentional for it to be that big, but it just kept getting bigger and bigger as I was writing the first draft. And even with my first draft, I sent it to my editor. She was like, you missed a whole plot line. You forgot to kind of like wrap that up,
Oh
which
no.
was like Kelly's whole like backstory, how she is who she is, sort of thing. And my editor was like, I kind of think readers might want to know this. You sort of have to.
Might need to include it.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, in my head it was in there. It just didn't end up
On the page.
in the Word document. So yeah, it then got chunkier again.
That's a fine. We're all going to enjoy reading it.
Hope, hopefully.
We're going to start off with the first question. What was your inspiration for the Soul Thief trilogy?
So the sort of starting moment for me was I watched some people very close to me go through a very difficult situation where they woke up one day and someone that was very close to, their family and friend group, you think people like that, and they didn't. A lot of things came to light, and it was like I knew these people as well, but I only knew them through my loved ones. So it was very interesting in a morbid sort of way to watch how people navigated that situation of what must it be like to just wake up one day and the person you thought you knew you actually don't know at all. So that was the sort of spark of the idea for the story. Tellium, the main character, I always had knocking around in my head. I just wanted to write a truly morally grey female main character who was a badass, an assassin, and very dry and prickly. So, but that sort of moment, I went, how would that play out in a fantasy setting? Because in fantasy, everything's always so much bigger and so much more
Yeah.
epic. So that is sort of the end scene in book one, The Assassin Thief. And then it all just spiraled outwards from there.
Did you always know it was going to be a three-book series, or was when you are actually just like writing the books, that's when it turned into you knew it was going to be three books?
Yeah, so I'm a chronic pantser, which means I don't make plans at all. So I sat down and wrote the end scene of The Assassin Thief book one first, and then went back to the start and was like, how do I get here? And I think I was about two-thirds of the way through before I sort of had written myself into a corner and went, okay, something's not working, and I've sort of stuck myself. So then I sat down and planned very loosely what was going to happen, which ended up being like 4 pages of dot points for the entire trilogy. So people who are actually planners would be horrified by that. But yeah, it was sort of not until that point that I was like, oh, I'm trying to write into a single book what should be a trilogy, and that's what was tripping me up.
Okay.
Hmm.
It's always good when you sort of you can work around the being locked into a corner though. Like you actually realize, yes, this is why I'm stuck.
Yes,
Instead of
it
like
was.
going and just like, no, I'm not going to write it anymore.
Yeah, it was that like aha light bulb moment as I sat down and I was like, oh, well, yeah, it needs to keep going, because where I see these characters being at the end of the story, they're not going to get there in this one book, or they don't have enough, on page screen time, whatever you want to call it, to sort of develop their characters and these relationships between everyone. Which I think you start to see a bit in book two. Telly starts to interact with more people. She gets her sort of the start of her found family. So yeah, it was definitely always meant to be a trilogy.
Trilogy. What drew you to writing?
Mm. I think anyone that's a big book nerd always has a dream like of writing, or you're like, I could do that, or you have a story that's knocking around in your head because you've pulled things from other stories, or you know, you've read a story, you're like, God, I hated that ending. I wish I could rewrite it. So I think anyone that's a huge book nerd always has, you know, ideas in the back of their head. And that's sort of, yeah, where it started. I never felt like I was like, I want to be an author. You know, maybe when I was young and in school, it was on my to-do list. But I didn't actually ever think it was like an achievable goal. My highest qualification in this field is like year 12 English. So I definitely felt like I was not qualified for this at all. And yeah, hubby one day just brought home a laptop, because obviously I had been chatting his ear off about this story, and he sort of just put the laptop down in front of me. He was like, just do it. Go. And I'm so stubborn that I will. And he goes, do it. I was like, I will, watch me. So
We've got to thank hubby for the books being written then.
yes, they, as corny as it sounds, they definitely wouldn't be here without him for sure.
You touched on this one as well. How did you choose which character to center the story around? I know you said that you had the girl main character in your head.
Yeah, I don't think it was a choice so much as she was just the one who forced her way into my head and was the loudest. um, yeah, I feel like a lot of the time when you're writing, you don't choose how your characters are going to be, or I certainly don't, at least. I never, you know, I will say I want a morally grey character, and then I think just from the daydreaming and, you know, subconsciously you create this character. Sometimes they need a bit of beefing up in, you know, when you have to make character bios and things, but it was never like an intentional thing for me to be like, this is exactly how the character is going to be. I just wanted her to be a bit of a badass and super like sassy and sarcastic kind of grading. um, yeah, and you know, just this cool assassin, and it just sort of, she just developed on her own from there.
Is that sort of similar to how your approach for world and character building goes, with the dreaming and whoever characters come to you?
Yeah, I think a huge chunk of writing is daydreaming, because that's how you develop sort of characters in your head. Once I have a character sort of set in stone, for lack of a better word, you know, I was like, this is the character that's going to go into this spot in the story. I do make character bios for them. So I have like a sheet that, and you can get character bios everywhere, you know, on Pinterest and online. And I just took things from particular bios that I was like, I want to know this about my character, and this stuff is irrelevant to me. So I sort of made my own Frankenstein character bio sheet, and I, for my main characters, will fill out the entire thing. And that covers everything from, you know, emotional wounds, who hurt them, you know, what are their beliefs, what are lies they tell themselves, all these things that sort of shape us as people. And you want your characters to be fully fleshed out people. I even go into like, would they rather coffee or tea, cats or dogs? Even if it doesn't end up in the story, I think knowing that about them makes them feel more real and gives them a personality. And then the character bio sheets sort of get smaller and smaller as the characters have less and less page time.
I really
Um,
like how I can find pieces of me in the characters as well. Like you actually can relate to them as well, which is, I always love doing that when I read the books. I'm like, oh
yeah,
yeah, I can see myself as this character.
yes. And that's absolutely what I think all authors want. You want readers to find a bit of themselves between the pages, whether it's in the main character or side characters, or just a situation that they get put in. But as for the world building, I always describe my world building sort of like if anyone is a gamer, and you know, as your character moves into the next level on a gaming map, it expands. You know, all everything that was all fuzzy starts to, you know, they're like, oh, here, new world. That's really what my world was like, of Alcoria and Threesreal. I have literally beside me here a really awful mud map of the world that's like lots of A4 pages stuck together, because as the world kept going, I was running out of space. So when I got to the end, I did go back and make sure everything sort of made sense and was where it was meant to be. But for the most part, I sort of just discovered the world with my characters as they moved through it.
Is that how your process for writing The Queen Thief went along? You were discovering her journey in the final book as well?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, I had again, a very rough, vague outline of what the story was going to be. But I think because I plan so loosely, it leaves me lots of room to, the characters' journeys change a bit. It's more like, here's where the book starts and here's where the book ends, and here's some really major plot points that have to happen along the way to get here. But other than that, it's like just go for gold. Some scenes in The Queen Thief especially are super self-serving, Like I was like, I just want this to happen because, you know, in the arc between the two characters, I'm like, I just think this is hot, so I think he should do it. And there's like no justification for it. But the best part of being an author is like I can write that in so it's justified to stay. And it's just because I want it to be in there. So yeah, the characters surprise you along the way. I would be writing a scene and like a character would die, for example. It's like, oh no, okay, well, we'll just make this up as we go. Carry on.
How would you describe The Queen Thief in 5 words?
Oh gosh. 5 words. Okay, heartbreaking. That's one word. Morally grey. That's technically two, isn't it? Okay, we'll
I'll
count
count
it.
it as one.
Okay, good. Heartbreaking, morally grey, epic, mm, slow burn. Can we count that as one as well?
Yeah.
Hyphened. And mm, found family. These are all like 2 words, but we'll hyphen them to be.
They'll link together, so you can't have one word without the other.
Yeah, yeah.
Which of the characters do you relate to the most and why?
Ooh, it kind of changes throughout the series, to be honest, because where each character is in the books changes quite a bit. In book one, definitely Tellium, the main character, because she's just trying to find her feet, and she just goes through a lot, and it's just trying to find your feet. And I really wrote her because it was like, it's okay to be mess up and be angry and all these emotions that I feel, particularly as women, where we're not allowed to feel. Like, women are not very morally grey in books, and if they are, I feel like the traits that we praise male morally grey characters for are quite demonized in women.
Yeah.
So that was important to me to write, and I quite bonded with that sometimes you don't fit into the mold. In book two, I don't relate to him as much, but the male main character, and I'm editing out names so I don't spoil
Yeah.
anything for anyone that hasn't read the series.
Right.
Yeah, not particularly because I related to him, but what he provides to Tellium. He's very patient and grounded and all these sorts of things that it's like, I feel like that's such a nice way to be loved, is with understanding and without expectations. And then book three would have to be Fallon, which is like, he's a side character. He's part of Tellium's found family, but he just has this, he's, big, brutish, scary looking assassin. And then he's just also like this big, soft, big brother, which I just love. Like, he just became such a lovable character to the point that my brain goes off on like, I can write a side story about him, just like a little because I love him. Bonus chapters or something.
Yeah. How has writing and publishing a book changed the way you see yourself?
Myself? Oh,
Mm.
damn. I mean, I feel like this whole journey, I've just been like, fake it till you make it. That's been my motto from day one. Because yeah, I still feel like I don't know what I'm doing. I still feel like I'm super underqualified for some of the things that are asked of me in a good way. But yeah, I guess it's taught me to stick to things and to dig in when things are hard, because you don't always sit in front of a computer and the words just magically flow. So it teaches you a lot of discipline. I very much learned that I'm a creature of habit, which I probably knew before, but it's become very apparent in my, in my writing journey, because if I stay in my habits and, on my days off from my day job, book days, as I call them, or author days, it'll be like, okay, well, you still set an alarm in the morning and make your bed and have breakfast and treat it like a real job. I had to be sitting down by, 8 a.m., 9 a.m. at my desk. My phone was across the other side of the room. So I definitely learned that I'm very much a creature of habit, that I like dark, tragic things, which again, I think I knew, but to have them shoved in your face is very apparent. uh, yeah, I have a far more appreciation for books because I was like, I love books. I'm a book person. And then seeing all this behind the scenes stuff, because New Dawn is an indie publisher, they're very small still, which is fantastic because we work so closely together. So I was sort of involved in the process every single step of the way. So to see how much effort and time and people and money goes into getting a book off like a Word document into
Yeah.
like this is, oh, it's amazing. And I definitely have more of an appreciation for books and the community behind them that gets them onto shelves for sure.
Especially like when you step across the sort of the line of reader to actually being in the actual industry, you actually, it's like, oh, I really 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 do appreciate this a hell of a lot more.
Yeah. And again, I have no qualifications prior to Year 12 English. I mean, I have qualifications, but not for this industry. So yeah, I just went in completely blind and I was like, what do you mean we have to do 12 edits and then a copy edit? And what's a typeset? And why does the typeset have to be done before you can make the cover? And it's because the cover designer needs to know exactly how thick the spine is going to be to not, throw off the graphics.
Yeah.
Just all these things. And I was like, oh my gosh, I just thought you kind of changed the formatting in Word and hit print and you were good to go. And that is just
Not it.
not the case at all.
Are there any books or authors that inspired you to become a writer that sort of brought you to actually go, yes, I'm actually going to, this is what inspired me to actually write?
Uh, I always say the books, particularly that were inspired by like The Assassin Thief, the ones that I was really loving at the time was The Demon Chronicles, it's called, by Peter V. Brett. The first one in the series is called The Painted Man. That's very, very dark fantasy, which I love. Graceling by Kristen
I
Crenshaw.
love that book.
I think it's so good, and I feel like I never see it on
No
stuff
one
on
talks
Instagram.
about it.
No, and they've just rebranded all her covers, and they are.
I really like the American covers as well. I'm like, we need to have them.
I
Yeah.
know. And I try very hard to never double up on books, but that new cover I was like, oh, I might just break my own rule here because the
Just
cover,
need it.
yeah, and the new cover, Winterkeep, is only in that version. And I was like, oh, but matchy set. Like,
Yeah, I need to match set now.
yeah.
I
So
can't
that,
reach it.
what else? I'm looking around at my shelf so I can, oh, the Red Queen series as well.
Mhm.
Is by Victoria Aveyard, Lord of the Fading Lands by C.L. Wilson, and probably the ACOTAR series by Sarah J. Maas.
Or some of the series that I have read or are on my list to read as well.
Recommend all of them. They're all, I mean, it's the Demon Chronicles is it's 5 books and they're all about this big. They're massive stories, but very good.
What advice would you give a writer working on their first book?
Oh, do you know what? It's keep writing, which is like the worst advice. It's so frustrating to receive that advice as a writer. I get it. But you have to keep writing. You just have to sit down and, if the difference between someone who wants to be a writer and is a writer and has finished is the determination and the discipline to sit down and keep writing. So, if people are just writing as a hobby for fun to get stuff out of their brain, that's absolutely fine. But if you are determined to see it on a shelf, then you really need to sit down when you don't want to and write when you don't feel like writing. So just keep writing is the most true and frustrating advice to receive as a writer because you can edit a really poorly written page because you felt like you were dragging words out by their teeth, but you can't write a blank page because you just weren't feeling it, you know? So you just got to get into a habit, treat it like a second job, which makes it sound depressing. But, you know, if even if it's only, you know, you can only do 500 words a week, then you sit down and you commit to that 500 words a week and you do it. If you can do more, great, you know, and that can be sitting down and writing. It can be making notes in a notebook, voice notes, you know, while you're driving and you just suddenly think of a good scene or plot hole. It all ends up somewhere. You just got to keep working on it a little bit, chip it away at it little bit by little bit. Yeah.
What's your favorite writing snack or drink to have?
Definitely coffee or tea is my go-to. Drink copious amounts of those. I have my big, I mean, this is my second coffee, so I have a very small reason as one, but I definitely have bigger ones. Snacks, I'm really bad for sweets. I have the worst sweet tooth. It's shocking. But anything that I can like eat with one hand
Yeah.
and that's not like I do love things like chips and stuff, but it's so annoying to have to eat and then like to keep typing. So something that's sweet, I can eat with one hand and sticks to my fingers. That's usually like chocolate and chips and little like lollies.
Yeah.
There's nothing healthy happens while I'm at my writing desk at all.
You need to treat yourself as
Yeah,
you may as well.
yeah. And you can start being like, well, you know, if you finish the scene, you can
Yeah.
have the rest of the pack of lollies. Like, it's fine. It's a little treat, a little reward.
Do you play music while you write? And if so, what's your favorite music?
Oh, yes. I'm a huge music listener. We were having this conversation, myself and Megan White, who's New Dawn's other author, at Perth Supernova just the other day. I think someone asked a similar question, and Megan writes in absolute silence.
I can't
Oh,
even I can't read in silence. Like I'm also really I can't read in silence too. I need background noise from
yeah.
as I'm reading too. Could not do it in silence.
I was horrified. I was like, what do you mean? In silence. She's like, there must be no TV noises, no music. And I'm like, I have my speaker. I don't have it in the room. I put it like in the sort of next room. So it is background noise. But always I listen to like hip hop, reggae, R&B, like definitely not writing music. Um, the only time I switch up my genre is if I'm really, really, really stuck and I'm trying to get myself like in the mood. Because I think I am such a mood writer because I'm a pantser. You know, if I'm not in like a happy, lovey-dovey mood, I have to play the right sort of music to like, you know, get me in the mood. But sometimes I will just literally look up, it's like, I think it's called dark fantasy studying playlist or something. And it's sort of just background music. So it's all very like Lord of the Rings or any like Dungeons and Dragons sort of all that sort of, it's just background music with no words. So that is my extremely stuck music.
Fair enough. I could not imagine doing it in silence, so me. It is
Oh
very
God. No. And she was like, but I can't hear myself think. And I was like, well, that's the point because my brain is too loud and I need to drown out some of the noise so I
and
can
does it make the story come on onto the page? It
yeah,
helps.
yeah. And maybe it's because the my writing voice. Megan writes very her writing is so beautiful. It's so lyrical. It's very V.E. Schwab sort of writing. It's lovely to read. And I was like, well, maybe that's why you listen in silence. I've had some readers say that the way I write is very like cinematic. You can imagine it on screen. And I was like, well, maybe that's why that's like the soundtrack in the background, why this epic scene's playing out in my head, you know? So
Other than your hubby, who has been your biggest supporter of your writing? Because you sent me answered that before, so I've
I
changed
did.
it. So other than your hubby.
Who's my biggest supporter?
Yeah.
Oh, I feel like kind of everyone. I mean, definitely the team at New Dawn. I mean, I know it's in their best interest, but they just picked me up so many times when I'm like, this sucks and I suck and everything sucks and I'm never going to write again. My editor, Ellie, she does all my structural edits, is a lifesaver. She's just like the best hype woman ever. She's always in your corner cheering you on, and she will always like just email and be like, if you ever need just a hype up, that's all, you know. And I have
Yeah.
messaged her sometimes. I'm like, please, please help. And there's not anything specific I need help with. I just need a bit of motivation. So yeah, definitely the team at New Dawn. Dylan, the director, will, he sends me updates for everything, which is so good for motivation. Like, here's how many books have been distributed. Here's cover art, we're trying to get it to the UK. Like, just all these little updates that are so good for your motivation, because then you're like, oh, that's right. Like, there are people who like my story and I mustn't be that crap. Like, so that, and all my readers, which sounds super corny, but anytime you get like tagged in a good review, or someone just will tag me because they're recommending my book, or when I see people at conventions and stuff, it's just so good to interact with people, because writing can be so isolating because you're sitting in a computer, and for the most part the books are sort of just sent away and people are telling you they're great. You're like, cool, but you don't see it. It's not tangible. So cons are so amazing for that, to have people come up and say, I read your book and I loved it. You're just like, oh, really? Like, oh, that's like, it just warms the cockles of my heart for sure. So I feel like I have lots of supporters, and I take bits from everywhere as I need it and hoard it.
I'm going to finish on a really mean question.
Okay.
If your book were to be made into a movie, which actors would play your characters?
Do you know what? I'm such a believer in not big name like faces,
Yeah.
just because I don't know. I always think that there's very few actors that I'm like, that's who I would want to play that character. Lots of the times I feel like I just randomly will find an account on Instagram, or scroll past something on Pinterest, and I don't know this person, but I'm like, this look, this vibe, that's what I'm going for. But definitely would want to put Charlize Theron as the Siren Queen, because there's just something so regal and on the edge of madness about her that I love. But damn, otherwise I think I would really struggle. Alexander Ludwig, is that how you say his name? He plays Björn in Vikings, would make a very good Malix, I think, because you want someone that's super pretty, but just a touch on the rough side. Like, I want him to be pretty, but not too pretty, not Legolas pretty,
Let's be a little
like,
bit rugged.
you got to be a little bit rugged, because we're not elves, we're fae, you're just like switch over the line. But otherwise, yeah, I feel like if it was ever a movie or series, I would love to pull new, fresh faces, into the series, because I feel like a lot of the time, like, I feel like, what's his name? Daniel Radcliffe is always going to be Harry Potter.
Yeah.
And seeing him in other movies, I'm like, why is Harry Potter in this movie?
Do
Like,
you
and
have like the
me.
typical bad guys like Tom Felton always going for the bad, like he's always casted as the bad guys now.
Yes.
So it's like
Mhm.
I totally see that, you need the
Yeah, yeah.
unknowns.
So yeah, I feel like I just want to do a casting call and just see all these faces and be like, you look exactly how I pictured in my brain that character should look.
Yeah,
Can you
definitely.
act, please?
Show me what you got.
Show me here's a line, read it out.
Those are all my questions. Thank you so much for the interview.
Thank you for having me. It's been fun.
It's been lots of fun. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I will see you around
Yes.
the release of book 3.
And I'm actually really excited.
I'll
And
try
it's
not
also
to hurt you
perfect
guys.
date for it too on Halloween.
It
How
just
did
brings
that
my little
happen?
heart joy. Book 2 came out on Halloween as well, but we were just so busy with events that we like fumbled the launch of it. Like, not the launch, sorry, like, but the event, like the launch event. So we're going to try to not do that this year. I really want to see if I can convince New Dawn. I'm like, yes, let's do a launch party, but I feel like it should be a dress up one because it's
Oh,
Halloween.
yes. That would
You
be
know, like, it's just a missed opportunity if you don't do like a trick or treat.
definitely.
But yeah, I'll try not to hurt you guys too much, but I make no promises, considering I think my editor cried 3 times editing the
Oh,
first round of drafts. Yeah,
no.
but it's fine.
Oh,
It's fine. Everything will be fine.
no. I'll prepare
Yeah.
myself.
Just maybe have some chocolate or something with you. Maybe that's it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
All right, thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.